Hello and welcome back for another episode of Talking Baldocks. This episode, 26, because Matt likes me to announce it like that. And
You weren't high pitched enough with the 26.
no, um, yeah. So my name's Neil Baldock. I think you're,
Yeah, I am. I can confirm Matt Baldock.
and this is Talking Baldocks. So we were chatting about the power of being curious, weren't we?
Well, yeah, and just asking questions for the sake of asking questions' sake, and if you're actually doing anything with that information. So, if I, the kind of tenuous link we live in this world on LinkedIn where, you walk and buy a sausage roll from the shops, and that leads you to a masterful business plan. Mine today was going to an onboarding session for Grayson, my baby, and your nephew, your youngest nephew, at the nursery. And we went to the nursery, and they obviously have a lot of questions to ask. But it just kind of got me thinking about the way that agents do things, because we agents have a lot of questions that you are mandatory. So, in terms of, there's obviously the material information stuff on the sales side. There'll be a lot of basic questions we need from our landlords. But I wonder how many of us actually just send out forms, get them back and go, right, that's done, and we were treating it as a tick box exercise, or do you actually even read them or even take the info yourself? So just the reason I mentioned the nursery is they're asking a lot of what I would consider to be standard questions, which they could have just sent me on an email, and and part of me, the way my brain works, was thinking, why am I sitting here for 50 minutes? I could have done all this within 10 minutes on a computer and send you the answers, and we'd be done. But they obviously want to get to know the baby. They want to get to know the parents. And so it is things like dietary requirements, what kind of nappies does he use, what time does he go to sleep. But she was actually asking the questions and writing the answers down so that she actually knew what she was going to, so she kind of took the answers in a little bit more, right?
Mm, mm,
And then before we left, the lady taking all the questions, she's not going to be the one that's with Grayson all the time. So she then introduces to the lady that would be working with Grayson. And again, that's a little bit like an agency. The lister is in someone's living room, but then if the agency is doing the viewings, the owner very rarely actually meets the people that have got a key to their house and are shown out. They give it to one stranger, as
mm.
Claire Yates has a very good piece on this, but they give it to one stranger who then gives the key to other strangers, and they never meet them. So that just kind of got me thinking as I do about agency. And I just wondered, out there, how many people are just sending out forms for the sake of sending out forms, but not actually digesting the answers and not actually then really knowing what they're selling.
Mm. Yeah, it's a very interesting point. I mean,
Thank you.
I don't think I'm going to start asking landlords what they'd like for lunch and what time they'd like me to put them to bed. But I think you're right. We do. There's information we need to carry out our job, and then there's information that we probably want. Because we actually, the more information we've got, the more we know how we can help the clients as well. So. Yeah, I mean, sorry, sort of the analogy and the example of you using the nursery is making me laugh really because
But imagine if you did know what your landlord or your seller's favorite dinner was or favorite lunch was.
well, yeah, I
Um,
mean, if I
and, and
turned
then
up with
you hear about a new restaurant opening up. So they go, oh, my favorite's Thai. And then you hear about this new independent Thai restaurant turning up in the town, and you just ping them a quick text or a quick email or a phone call, even and say, hey, just did you know that's opened up?
no, it's not that. It's just I've got visions of the inventory clerk turning up, and I'm sort of putting the landlord to bed and giving them a bottle, but have to tell the inventory clerk to keep the noise down. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, what a brilliant way to be able to surprise your client and delight them and, turn up with their favorite sandwich or something like that. So yeah, no, I mean, this is brilliant because it's descending into chaos. But it's just the sort of the correlation is funny. But the point behind it is completely correct.
The point behind it is good, but now I don't think I can do it because now all I've got visions is you with a massive bottle.
Amazing.
No, not you rocking anyone to bed, just you being bottle fed.
Oh God, this is gonna
Yeah.
This is gonna be
You
the
bought with the baby's bonnet on.
this is gonna be the worst podcast episode we've ever done.
This is
But
truly talking Bulldogs.
yeah, well, that's the whole point of it. But yeah, no, you are right. I mean, if you knew your clients were really interested in wine, uh, because you were there onboarding them and you saw they had a huge wine rack, and rather than just ignore that, you opened up a conversation about it, or you saw they had a collection of craft beers or pictures on the wall of them playing a certain sport and whatever else. I think you're right. We need to get to know our clients a bit more personally. I mean, we always say people start as a customer and then they become a client and then they become a friend. So we kind of try and take them on that journey as much as we can.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you're right. Gary V's got a brilliant video on this, a really old video from when he used to do his wine library days. And I can't remember if it was someone that bought wine off him or somebody that complained. But anyway, they literally looked the guy up on Facebook, saw he was, I'm sure it was a New England Patriots fan, went on eBay, bought some very cheap but something signed by Tom Brady, and basically either with the order or with the apology, rather than just being like, "Oh, here's a voucher," they sent this signed article, and they said this customer was then a customer for life.
mm,
Um, and so, I mean, listen, we've all got social, so we could stalk our clients, but yeah, asking the questions. And as you say, it's a personal thing, right? If you're selling a property for somebody, you're going to have a relationship with them for let's say 9 months. I think on average now it's 2 months to find a buyer, and it could be up to 7 months for that bloody deal to go through. So 7 to 9 months, you've got an actual relationship with this person. So you have to keep it professional, and it is sometimes it's difficult acting for a friend or acting for a family member because you've got to have tough conversations with these people. Um, but yeah, you are forming, you're spending the best part of a year with somebody for a very emotional part of their life. So you should get to know them a bit. And if you can find some mutual ground on which to discuss, then that always makes things a lot easier.
no, definitely. But also, it will benefit you as a business because that nursery weren't asking those questions for the sake of asking them. They're asking them because they need to know, what the baby's needs are and kind of, for his own welfare. But of course, if they can deliver those things, then you'll keep him there. So therefore, it's good for their business. And it's similar with our clients. It's like, if someone was telling you they were struggling financially, you could just gloss over that, or you could say, "Well, look, do you mind me asking why? Because I might have a few solutions to that."
Mm.
And by asking it that way, they can either say, "Well, yes, I do mind," and that's their own choice, or the likelihood is they'll probably say, "Oh, well, I'll just be honest, like my mortgage costs are so high and my tax costs and blah blah blah." At which point you can turn around and say, "Well, look, if I can help you with that, would you be interested?" And then you might take them down the mortgage route, not because you're thinking, "Great, I'm going to get a commission off that." The end result is you might do, but because you're thinking, well, actually, if I can help the client to retain that rental property, or whatever the situation is, then it's good for the client. So, what I'm saying is, it also benefits the business. So, I think curiosity. I mean, I'm always asking people, like, obviously, I focus on landlords a lot because that's the sort of the side of the business I concentrate on, but I'm always curious with landlords and asking them how did they get this size of portfolio? And
Ju-
I've never ever been told, piss off, Neil. It's none of your
Well,
business.
that's yeah, but again, that's because of the way you go about and do things. If the first question you ask somebody is like, "What? Tell me about your money problems," or how much have you got in the bank," or stuff like that. But going back to the finding out what your landlord's favourite sandwich is, or you said his favourite sandwich, if you ask enough questions about somebody that they believe you truly care about them. And I will just say this, the way to get someone to believe you care about them is to actually care about them. So,
Yeah.
like we always say, and I always say, agency is about people, not property, right? People first. So you have to have an interest in them as people. But if you've got a client where they think you care about them to the degree that you even know something about their social life or their favorite dinner, whatever that is, they're then much more likely to feel comfortable opening up to you about the bigger things,
Mm.
which will then lead down the road to more business. Because, yes, I'm saying it's about people, but we're all here to earn money. But I think people can smell bullshit a mile off if you just ask if you're fake friendly. But if you show some real care, empathy, and real interest in them, rather than just can we get to the money part, then down the line they're going to open up and you're going to do more work with them. As you mentioned, in referrals or with a landlord, I would guarantee that most letting agents listen to this have got a landlord where they've got two or three properties and that landlord's got another couple, but they just don't either know about them or they haven't given them yet. Because
Mm.
landlords don't like to put all their eggs in one basket.
No, that's right. And they're not going to tell you until they really trust you. And then they're not even going to tell you just because they trust you. They're probably only going to tell you when you ask them about it.
Yeah.
Um, so,
So to give that more of like a real world context, rather than just laughing about bottle feeding, then obviously we've put out there, we're opening a second office over in Reading, and we're starting with 150 managed tenancies, which not many people get to start from scratch with that. But do you want to give a bit of a background as to how we suddenly ended up with one landlord, well, a corporate client, giving us 150 properties?
well, yeah, because I asked the question to sum it up. But basically, because we took on a job that probably not a lot of agents would have taken on, in all honesty, because it was a job where the it's an HMO, which obviously we kind of specialise in, and it wasn't in very good condition and had some very bad, poor quality tenants, and the place had just been badly managed. So many agents wouldn't have even touched it with a barge pole. But yeah, we've always taken a can-do attitude, and we kind of take the view that we're very much a problem-solving company. So as long as it makes sense, we'll do it. And we've done a very good job down there. And so I've just developed a relationship with this client and asked them, out of interest, this is because I could see the way they'd bought that property was at auction. They just bought it with the tenants, and I just said to them, "Are you looking to do more of this? And do you have any other properties?" And then they said, "Well, actually, yeah, we own." It's actually 300 in Reading that they own, isn't it? And we're going to give you half to start and see how you go, and then we'll look to give you the other half. And we've got multiple sites around the country for them now.
Yeah, and really, they're looking for one agent that they trust to be, no matter where it is in the country. They don't want to go and use 20 different agents. They're looking for one agent to be their point of contact. Because we even looked for some after a commercial thing, like Portsmouth kind of way for them as well, don't we?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so they're looking for one point of contact who can handle everything and just get and what they want to see is that stuff gets done. Um, and that is what we do. We get stuff done. So
But
yeah,
without
but
you being curious and actually asking the questions, we wouldn't have done it. I was thinking another one. We got past the lead the other day from another agent who said, "Oh, this guy's phoned me about. He doesn't even own the HMO. He wants to know if he should buy it." So the agent was thinking, "I've probably no business in it, but also I don't really deal with HMOs. You do it." And then once we had a chat with him, the guy actually owned 50 buy-to-lets.
mm,
And so it's very short-sighted sometimes of agents that they just hear one thing. So they hear, I might buy an HMO, can you help? I think I'm not interested in that. But if you actually have dialogue and have conversations with people, it's amazing what else they have.
well, definitely. And it's just actually it's only come into my head as we're talking about it, but it's just normal consumer behaviour and being a salesperson. I look back to the days when fresh out of school in my retail career, someone might walk in asking to buy one thing, and when you actually get curious with them and say, "Well, look, why do you want that? What is the purpose of buying it?" They say for that, and you say, "Well, actually, that's not the right thing for you." So you end up selling them something completely different to what they came in for because it was the right, because what they were looking for wasn't the right thing. And you might, if you're curious enough, you might say, "Well, do you need anything else for that trip you're going on, or what the case is?" And then all of a sudden, they say, "Well, actually, yeah, I was about to go so and so place and get this." And you say, "Well, did you know we do that as well?" So you've got to ask questions, and people aren't ever going to just walk in and just go, like, "Sell me everything." Here's like, do you know what I mean? People aren't just going to walk in and give you
Yeah,
all the opportunities in the world. You've got to you've got to be curious and be interested and speak to people and find out about them.
exactly. And so just kind of bringing it back where I did want to get to before we descended into chaos. Just with agents, really. So my belief is there's a lot of agents. Well, there's a lot of agents not collecting material information, which isn't ideal. But there's a lot of agents just collecting it as a tick box exercise. And it's all well and good collecting info, but it's what do you do with it? So I spoke to a CRM recently, and they were showing me how clever they were, and you've got this automation, it collects all the material information. I said, oh, that's great, but what happens with it from there? And they said, well, no, nothing. You've done your bit. You've completed your due diligence. And I was like, yeah, but what do you actually do with that information? And she said, well, I don't know what you mean. And she actually said, all the agents I've shown this have loved it. And I said, well, I don't think those agents are very clever then, because there's no point just doing it just to say I've done it and then the info sits there in a box. So, we use Catini, and what they do when they collect the information, they then convert it into the TA forms. So then all of a sudden we have legal protocol forms ready to go. So once we have a sale, rather than the solicitor having to send them out, someone fill them in, then they go back, then they go over to the other side, we've literally got them and we can say, right, here's your sales memorandum and here's your TA form. So, we're shaving some time off the conveyancing process. Um, but even further than that, the customer admittedly fills them all in themselves. So when we get the form back, I say to my team, read these forms, have a look at it. I mean, Coutinho again, do, and we are fans of them. I'm not ashamed of saying that, but they break it down into more manageable bite-sized chunks. But I actually say read it. And then the other thing we do is if it's me or the sales manager in the living room, presenting, realistically and honestly, I'll go and do the valuations, but I'm not going to go and do the viewings. But
Mm.
I'll let the owner know that. But then I will send the sales team to see the property. So if it's empty, the owner knows they've seen it at least. Or if it's not empty, the owner gets to meet them. And I will always do an email introduction to the whole sales team saying, like, I'm handling the marketing now, but these people are going to take over. This is their individual email addresses. For ease, you can all get more of this. And this is what they do. And then so the guys and girls, they actually know what they're selling, that they've seen it, they can answer questions, but the owner also knows who's dealing with their property.
Mm.
And that's the thing I would urge, if you're out there and you're kind of feeling really good about yourself because you're collecting material information, I would really urge you to take the next step and say, what are you doing with that? So are you actually making it useful? And are your team actually aware of what that says?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just a case of briefing people properly, isn't it? And taking the time to pass on information. So, like when we onboard a new rental property, we send out an email called the new to market, and it goes out to the whole team and says this is the property coming on, this is the price, is it furnished, all the normal information you need. But if the landlord's then told us something specific, we'll also include that on there, so the whole team, knows that information, so they're not asking them questions that someone else has already been told. And that just shows your customer that you're listening, because there's nothing worse really than them saying, "Oh, well, I told Neil this," or "I told Matt that,"
Yeah.
and then no one else knows it. Um, but it's easily done, isn't it? It's just actually taking an interest and recording the information and then passing it on.
Yeah, and if you do that at the very start, the owner they'll then that's where the trust element comes in. And so if down the line you have to have a difficult conversation, so if you have to look at changing the price, or you have to recommend a different buyer or a different tenant, or different terms, whatever it is, the owner's more likely to trust your judgment on that because you've built up that element of trust at the start. So if you're in someone's living room and you say, I'm going to send you these forms. The team are going to read them, and then they're going to come and look at the property. If that doesn't happen, you've just been the agent that says stuff and doesn't do it. But it doesn't have to be big gestures. If you just say little things that are going to happen, and those little things do happen, then you build those kind of
Mm.
bricks of trust. So when the big decisions need to come in, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. And just going back to the sort of analogy of what's your nap, what time is your nap time? But it does actually translate into the adult world, because you should be asking your customers, what do they do for a living? Because if they do night shifts and you're constantly phoning them in the morning, they're going to be pretty damn pissed off. Whereas if you've asked them and they said, look, I'm a police officer, or I work at the hospital and I work nights, please don't phone me in the morning, because I need to catch up on the sleep. Then don't phone them in the morning.
Yeah.
And you could, and okay, you could, if you hadn't asked that question, you might phone them in the morning, they'd tell you, and then you don't do it again. But it's a hell of a lot better to have actually known that information from the start.
Although actually that was the point I was going to make at the very start of the podcast until I couldn't breathe. So yeah, no, precise. But all the things like that, just asking those kind of questions, finding out again about the owner situation. The amount of times you'll see a listing and it's chain free, and you go, well, how come it's chain free? And the agent will say, oh, because they were going to move into rented. Like, do you know how difficult it is to move into rented? Like,
Mm,
move it, especially when you're selling a property. So actually, have you asked? Okay, so don't just say, "Oh yeah, it's fine. We'll sell it to you. I'm going to move into rented," and go tick. It's okay. What are you looking for? Where do you need to live? How many bedrooms? What price up to? Because if they go, "Oh, I'm going to move into a two-bed flat and I've got £300 a month to spend," well, that's not going to happen. So you need to kind of actually make sure that it is possible to move on, because a chain-free sale where a rental is involved can actually take longer than a huge chain. So there are, questions like that. And again, not just, oh, you want three bedrooms. It goes back to, what are the bedrooms going to be used for? Well, I actually need two and an office. Fine. So you need a two-bedroom house with an extra room downstairs where the kids go to school. Just again, showing interest in all that. You'll just get to where you want to be, and which is ultimately getting sales, and that's quicker with the more information you've got.
100%.
Good. Right. Well, a shaky start, but I think we got through it, and hopefully we've provided some value to people there. I remember this last one. I'm going to remember again. As always, please do like, subscribe, comment if you can. It's nice to know if you're listening or watching, and we'd like to know your thoughts. So please do that. We shall be back. We might not be back next week because it's your birthday next week,
Mm. Yeah, so
but
we might not.
we might have a skip, but we'll see. But until then, I've been Matt Baldock. He's been,
Neil Baldock.
and we've been talking Bulldogs.